Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalrin, and I just kind of want to make a quick video talking a bit about why I feel like melee are just so much more dominant in PvP. Now, before I go on, I do understand that at the highest level, Gladiator and above, when you have the best of the best players play any of the classes, you can make any class and any spec work, no matter the situation, if you just put enough effort into it. So I understand that completely. We're not talking about PvP at Gladiator levels because that's not where majority of the PvP happens. Most of the PvP happens more at a base level, more at the casual level, where you would have your Battlegrounds, 2v2s, skirmishes, maybe some casual 3v3s. This is where most of the game happens, and this is where most of the players' experiences come from, where most players say that melee just have too many good perks and too many advantages and compared to, let's say, that of a caster. Something what a demon hunter can do compared to what a shadow priest can do, and it just feels unbalanced and a little bit dysfunctional. So I want to take a look at what are some of the things that melee have that makes them so strong, and why casters are kind of falling behind when it comes to PvP on even just the casual level. Let's take a look at some of the best melee in the game. Some of the best melee in the game are demon hunters, death knights, pharaohs, rogues in a pretty good spot, warriors can be in a really good spot, windwalkers in a good spot. I'm basically taking all the different melee classes we saw in a recent journey, where one of the most common comps and one of the most popular comps was double demon hunter. So that should probably be setting off some red flags for a lot of you. A lot of these classes have a lot of ranged abilities for melee, and a lot of them come from between ranged kicks or ranged CC. For monks it would be ranged incapacitate, for demon hunters it's ranged imprison, ranged kick, for death knights it's ranged kick. For pharaohs it's kind of like a ranged charge kick, but have fun trying to root a pharaoh or slow him down because they can just shift out of form whenever they want to, just to break all the slows. A lot of these classes that have all these ranged capabilities I feel like could be applied as an extra bonus for a class that's underperforming. For example, imagine an enhancement shaman. For me, a perfect enhancement shaman that has all the purges and all the range kicks is somebody who is a class that doesn't have a lot of burst damage, has okay sustained damage, but because they don't have a lot of burst damage for PvP, they get purge and range kicks, so they can get together with a powerful melee or a powerful caster and provide a support role type of gameplay, where you are supporting your teammates by dealing damage to the enemy with whatever damage you have, but you're mostly there to purge off HOTS and all the other buffs that enemies would get, like something to reduce damage, and you would have a ranged kick, which would supplement for the lack of damage. But in Legion, instead of shamans playing a support role, shamans actually have very strong burst damage and very strong sustain, so it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife kind of toolkit combination. They basically do literally everything in the game, which is what I feel like is a little bit awkward when you have classes that literally do everything and they don't have any drawbacks. Let's take a look at some of the other melee. Most of them have mobility, a lot of mobility, whether it be Subtlety, Rogue, Shadow Strike spam that we had before. We have Death Knights who have a grip, which I consider mobility because it's like a reverse charge, and even then they have a second mobility, Death's Advance, so they can still keep going at you after they have tried to death grip you. Most of the casters just can't get away from a demon hunter unless you're playing a mage, and if better yet, you might as well be playing an arcane mage, so you have 2 blinks, 1 reverse blink, so then you get a blink refund, so it's like 3 blinks and 1 reverse. That's the most mobile caster in the game, is arcane mage. The second one for it is every other mage spec, and then just about every other class in the game. You have most melee with 1 or 2 gap closers, but most of the casters have 1 mobility capability except for mage. And I guess mage is the kind of class that is squishy, and you would think the other classes would be a lot tankier, but as a rogue I can tell right now, it doesn't matter if the paper is a shadow spec, frost spec, demonologist spec. Paper is paper, and for a melee it's pretty easy to get through. So you have really powerful melees that have a lot of capability for range capability, CC, mobility, but a lot of them also have stuns to the combo with burst. When you stun somebody, they can't really do anything to peel themselves, they can't really do anything for support, maybe to damage back. Once you're stunned, you're screwed. And most casters don't have a stun and burst combination, unless you bring someone like a shadow priest, and even shadow priest isn't even designed to do it. Most of the melee are designed where you can stun an enemy and then pop your burst, and that's it. You got the most amount of damage you could have for the rest of the day. You can deal damage, you can dish out whatever damage you need to while the enemy is locked, like they are stun locked and they can't do anything. Most casters need to build up procs, they need to build up charges, they need to build up some kind of a resource, they need to do a lot of build up before they can really start doing some real damage for PvP. And I guess that's kind of just the plight of casters when it's designed for PvP. They're just not the same as melee. I feel that even if you look at the talents for casters, the second row of honor talents, I think there could be something interesting added to it. In the past expansions, we had casters where, let's say, they would be hit with a melee attack, some of their basic abilities would become instant cast. Or we just simply had a lot of casters who had a lot more instant cast abilities, so you can cast while a melee is pounding on you. We had casters that weren't mobile, like warlocks, but had a plethora of defensive abilities. But then we had some of the other casters, like a shadow priest, who were forced to use constant heal, constant self heal with renew and power word shield, and a few flash heals whenever they catch any, as well as using a guise where they would basically go into stealth for 3 seconds to try to evade melee. You had a lot of these things where casters were designed with the idea that, okay, this could actually work well against melee, that could work against melee, and then you would combine a few abilities together or a few talents, and you would have an awesome effect where melee could actually play with casters, and casters could hold their ground. Either casters had good lineup for CC to force defensives and trinkets out of melee, maybe they had really good mobility, maybe they had a lot of defensives, but it felt a little bit more balanced. With the strip that they did in Legion, a lot of the prune happened, and there's just not a lot of abilities for casters to look at and play with. And that's just something I think Blizzard could definitely do better with. And I think in the future expansions, it would make sense for them to put a little bit more effort in terms of caster design and maybe how casters interact in PvP. But this is the reason why most casters are not as good and melee simply dominate PvP. They simply just have better luck of the draw. Again, in 3v3, it really equalizes out, and when you're talking about high-end gameplay, it doesn't make too much of a difference. But on a casual level, melee definitely feel more satisfying for PvP, and those were the reasons why that I listed in the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think casters are just as fun, or do melee definitely have an obvious advantage here? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all in another video.